So in the last webinar, we began what we ourselves called decoding sat-chit-ānanda. These three Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Under the broader title Decoding Sat-Chit-ānanda, in this webinar, we are all set to decode Chit. Sat, Chit or Ananda. Sat, Chit or Ananta. Any one of them actually is a lot of food for thought. We should not take these words lightly. We should not take them casually. They are used at so many places, but even one of those words can be the launch pad for great Vedantic contemplation, and the wisdom of the Vedanta has this to say: if we have clear contemplation, clear understanding of the Shastra, nothing else is needed for our freedom, for mukti, for release. Therefore, it is of great significance that we take up trying to understand Chit. We take this body, which is jada, inert, to be us. Who am I? I am this 67 kgs physical body. Even to take our thoughts and emotions, even to take many other descriptions of ours in terms of qualification or accomplishments, our status in the society, and so on and so forth, all that boils down to taking the insentient to be our nature or our identity. It is as foolish as imagining our reflection in a mirror to be ourselves. We are not the reflection. We are standing before the mirror, and if the mirror is concave or convex, what is seen in the mirror is a distortion. But suppose we have forgotten who we are, and the mirror image itself is real. That's a tragedy. Therefore, friends, the journey of Vedanta from spiritual ignorance to enlightenment to the wisdom is one of moving from identity with the inert to realizing that we are 100% sentient. Aham jyotihi, aham chit, aham samvid rupaha, aham prajnana rupaha. Don't stop there. Aham samvid, samvideva. Aham chit, chit eva. 100% I am light and light only. That is the height of realization. And the Upanishads say to us, you are light and you are the light of all lights. You are the light of all lights is an elegant summary of the Upanishads, their teachings. Bhagavad-Geetā too says this at several places, but especially in the 13th chapter, on which I am presently giving lectures in San Jose, California. Sri Krishna brings out this with great force. Jyotishamapi tad-jyotihi tamasah param-uchyate. You are beyond light. The word you may not be there in that shloka, but in the 13th chapter, he says, in everybody's life experience, there is the known kshetra and the knower kshetrajna, and then hastens to add, I am the knower in everyone. Therefore, the knower is God. We know our thoughts, we know our bodily experiences. So this knower in us is God, is divine. But there is some erroneous perception, and the jiva, the ahankara, ego, is up and active. I recited Purnamadaha Purnamidam as the invocation in this webinar because, to my knowledge, if there is one Upanishad which has gone a lot into Chit Swarupa, into narrating or elaborating on our nature as pure consciousness, that is Brihadāranyaka Upanishad of Shukla Yajurveda, and the Upanishads of Shukla Yajurveda have Shanti Mantra, which is no other than Purnamadaha Purnamidam. You begin the Upanishad study with Purnamadaha. If you are reading an Upanishad from Shukla Yajurveda, you conclude also saying Purnamadaha. And in the fourth Adhyaya chapter and the third section or Brahmana, there is a lot said about our nature being pure consciousness. Figuratively, this consciousness principle is called Jyoti. Jyoti is light. And that section, therefore, is called jyotir-brāhmana. One fine morning, Yājnavalkya arrives at the kingdom, at the court or the palace of King Janaka, and Janaka requests him, please answer my question. What is light in your understanding? And Yājnavalkya in the beginning says, the sun is the light during the day. The moon is the light during night. When, let us say, there is neither sun nor moon, some lamp. Let's say lamp has got extinguished. Then if you are standing in a dark area, somebody calls you, come this way, walk in my direction. That speech, that sound, somebody calling you, is your light that helps you go in that direction. And Yajnavalkya patiently leads Janaka step by step, and Janaka finally asks, when none of these lights is available, is there any light? Yajnavalkya smiles. We can imagine him smiling. Janaka, you are an extraordinary student. The light of all lights is ātmā. Ātmā eva jyotihi. And in that very jyotir-brāhmana, in that section, there is a string of mantras, which is a pleasure to read, which is a delight to go through, even from literature point of view. I won't read all the 8 mantras, but each mantra has much in common. Yadvaitanna pashyati, pashyan vaitanna pashyati, nahi drashtur drishter viparilopo vidyate. अविनाशित्वात् न तु तद्वितीयमस्ति ततो अन्यद् vibhaktam yat pashet. About seeing, Yajnavalkya says to King Janaka, nahi drashtur drashtehe viparilopo vidyate. Objects may or may not be in front of you, but your nature as seeing doesn't take a break even for a split second. Two friends met, A and B, and A said to B, look at the sky. What do you see? The friend B said, I see some birds. Please count them. 7 birds are flying. After a while, there were only 6 birds. Then only 5. Friend A said, what do you see now? Only 4 birds. After a while, 2, 1. And then there was no bird in the sky. And the friend A said, now what do you see, my dear? And this friend B said, I don't see anything. Ah, you have gone blind. You have now gone blind. If he doesn't see any bird, is there any problem with his eyesight? This is an example with some limitations. But in the theme proper, there is no limitation. You and I were, are, and will be that light of consciousness. Nahi drashtuhu drashtehe viparilopaha vidyate. No lapse. Birds or no birds, you are seeing. Objects, emotions, thoughts, experiences may or may not be coming up. You are ever that pure seer. One or two more I'll mention in that string of 8 mantras. Yadvaitanna jigrati, jigranvaitanna jigrati, nahi gratuhu gratehe, viparilopo vidyate. In the context of smelling, maybe there is something to smell, maybe there is nothing to smell, but you having that capacity to know, smell, you never cease to be a knower. Gratuhu, gratehe, viparilopaha. Viparilopaha means a lapse or break. Na vidyate. Avinashitvat. That pure self that you are by nature is indestructible. And he adds in every mantra, there is no dvitiya. Tadvitiyam na asti. And this echoes in many other Upanishads also, in Chandogya and even Taittiriya. The sense of duality is a mischief of the mind. Thought creates duality. Lastly, I'll read one more, 8th one, where it is about knowing through the buddhi. Yadvai tanna vijanati, vijananvai tanna vijanati, nahi vijnatuhu vijnatehe viparilopo vidyate. Your nature to know has no lapse, no break. There is no power shutdown in the context of the pure self. So, more light is thrown by Yajnavalkya. Sometime we will take this jyotir-brāhmana itself for an entire webinar, if not several webinars. It is so elevating. Now, what is this chit, which we are calling light? Is it different from sat? In Upadesha-Sara of Sri Ramana Maharshi, in the 23rd verse, it is said, Sattva bhasika chitkva vetara sattaya hi chit chittaya hi aham. The light that makes us know that we exist, sattva bhasika chit. Is it other than sat? By asking so, Maharshi conveys, Chit and Sat are not two different things. Please don't even say they are two facets, two sides. Don't let loose your ordinary imagination, usual imagination in this matter. This is a very high plateau matter. Don't say Sat may be the upper part and Chit may be the lower part. Maybe Sat is surrounded by Chit. Because this mind of ours, having experienced the phenomenal universe, is extremely conditioned by space and by time. We are extremely conditioned, programmed. Everything has to be in space. One is in front, another is behind, one is above, one is below, one is far, another is near. This thinking is so deep rooted. Likewise, we think of waking dream and deep sleep also as being on the same axis of time. Time has become so sacrosanct for us. Whereas there are certain Vedanta teachers who say when there is waking, time is internal to waking. When there is dream, time is internal to dream. For heaven's sake, don't put time, that is waking, dream, and then deep sleep, on one axis of time. Like several bogies, several compartments of a long train are on a single railway track. It is the conditioned intellect of ours which creates new models, and then we get stuck in those models. Vedanta is not so concerned with improving your models endlessly. Vedanta says, wake up from all your models. Let it be a quantum leap. Let it be a leap from the sphere of space and time and causation, for that matter, to that where there is no space, no time. So Maharshi Ramana says, Sattaya hi chit. Chit is in the form of Sat. Sat is in the form of Chit. They are one only. In philosophical deliberations, we look at the highest reality sometimes as Sat, sometimes as Chit. Just as in the context of bhakti and God forms, higher you go, you say Harihi eva Haraha, Haraha eva Harihi. Shiva is Vishnu, Vishnu is Shiva, and so on. But a conditioned mind not only divides but generates some hierarchy also over there. Quickly, I must share with you a beautiful shloka. It is called Shankaracharya's Eka Shloki. Many masters, many saints, many illumined ones have attempted putting the gist of their teachings in a single shloka. And that putting so much in a single verse creates a category or a genre called Ekashloki. There is Ramana Ekashloki. Maybe there are other Ekashlokis, but this is Shankaracharya's Ekashloki. A student comes to a teacher and wants that supreme liberating wisdom, and the teacher asks him a question. Kim Jyoti, just as Janaka asked Yajnavalkya, here the teacher asks the student to elicit the highest reply eventually. Kim Jyoti, the student says, Bhanuman Ahani. Bhanu is, or Bhanuman is the sun. Ratrau Pradipadikam. At night I use various lamps. The moon is not mentioned in this shloka. The teacher smiles and says, Devam, let it be so. But tell me, how do you see the sun and how do you see a lamp? Ravi Deepa Darshana Vidhau Kim Jyotihi Akhyahi. Tell me. Akhyahi means tell me. And the student ponders and says, well, my eyes are my light. Here, light means that by which you see. Thanks to my eyes, I see the sun. Thanks to my eyes, I see the lamps. Chakshuhu. All right, the teacher now intervenes. When you open your eyes or you close your eyes, how do you know you have opened your eyes, you have closed your eyes? Tasya nimilana adi samaye kim. The student says, well, it is my buddhi. Another word for buddhi is dhihi. Nimilana adi samaye kim dhihi. Dhihi dhiyaha is buddhi. The teacher persists. Dhiyo darshane kim jyoti. How do you know that you have thoughts? That's the end of it. The student, obviously, or by context, the student must be a very mature student, and therefore he takes no time to position himself or herself in the place of pure witnessing consciousness. How do I know my thoughts? I don't need one more instrument. I see them. Tatra eva aham. I see thoughts. Don't ask me how do you see. I don't need anything to see. I see thoughts. And the teacher sums up. Bhavan paramakam jyotihi. This true I in you is the supreme light. And the shloka beautifully concludes by the disciple bowing down and saying, acknowledging, Tadasmi Prabho. Yes, I am the light. Now I understand. I am the light. Kim jyotir-brāhmana me ratrau pradipadikam syadevam ravidipadarshana vidhau kim jyotirakyahi me chakshustasya nimilanadi samaye kim dhihi dhiyo darshane tatraivaahamato bhavan paramakam jyotihi tadasmi prabho. This is a nice way of summarizing this matter of consciousness. Now, on a more serious front, we go to Taittiriya Upanishad. Brahmanandavalli begins with a bang. Brahmavida param sadesha bhyukta satyam jnanam anantam brahma. So, Chit or Samvit or Prajnanam is called in Taittiriya Upanishad Jnanam. Satyam is Sat, Jnanam, then Anantam. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. About Jnana, Shankaracharya says in his commentary, Jnanam Jnaptihi Avabodha. That we can't call it a process. Don't call it a phenomenon. All words of the phenomenal universe fail in pointing out certain metaphysical truths. But having no other go, he calls it jnaptihi, knowing, avabodha, knowing, and then clarifies. Bhava sadhanaha jnana shabdaha natu jnana kartru. See, this is not a very difficult topic. Please pay attention. In knowing, there could be two possibilities. One is, as I know, I have a sense of doing, sense of doership, sense of I am knowing, I am the knower now. Or it could be without any sense of doership. It's just natural. It's just like fragrance comes from a flower. The examples may have some limitations, but they point to a certain truth which is 100% free from any doership. Now you may wonder what is the problem with doership? Why does this Advaita Vedanta fret and fume when doership and enjoyership figure in the matter? Shankaracharya explains here. He says, Brahma Visheshanatvat, Brahma is infinite. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, Ananta. Since Jnanam is here a pointer a pointer to Brahman, it has to be free of any doership. Why? He gives a sentence. Jnana kartrutvena vikriyamanam katam satyam bhavet. Once you are a doer, this being a doer, though it gives us a kick when we do something. First time we learn riding bicycle. And I learned bicycle, during my high school days. I was so excited. I was riding and I thought one Ronald was, he was holding my cycle behind because he used to. But I was going. Suddenly I discovered that Ronnie is far away and I'm going on my own. I got so excited. I should not have done something which I did that time. I lifted both my hands and saluted Ronnie, my instructor. Thank you, Ronnie, I said. That's when I fell down and got hurt very badly. Now, the idea is, excuse me for that rather very commonplace example. If you ride a cycle, that's an activity. In that, there is change. Your legs move, your hands move, your emotions move. There is so much of change going on. In doership and in enjoyership, in kartrutva and bhoktrutva, whether you like it or not, there is vikara. Vikara is change. And the philosophical principle is whatever changes cannot be eternal. That change eventually ends up or terminates or culminates in death. Change leads to finally death. Whatever changes finally dies. So you have Shankaracharya saying, Jnanam cannot be an activity. It is just the nature. Therefore, without sense of knowing, you know. The sense of knowing comes in the mind. Vikara applies to the instruments, eyes, ears, nose, mind, intellect, etc. So Puja Chinmayananda used to say, when you use the word chit in the set of three words, sat-chit-ānanda, it is consciousness irrespective of objects. Objectless awareness. Objects or no objects. It is shining. It is the knowing principle. Therefore, we say it is CHIT-TATTVA. And the Upanishads have called this CHIT-TATTVA as we already said, light of all lights. And there is a famous mantra. I would be surprised if everyone attending this webinar knows that mantra, is familiar with that mantra. Na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarakam, nema vidyuto bhanti, kutoyam agnihi, tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam, tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. In Mundaka Upanishad, second Mundaka, second Khanda, 10th mantra. In Kathopanishad it appears, second Valli, second Adhyaya, second Valli, and 15th mantra. And Shvetashvatara Upanishad also has that mantra. The sun, the moon, fire, stars, Chandra, Tarakam, Agnihi, the five sources are mentioned. All of them have no value. They all give you reflected light. True light is only in the pure truth, which you are. That is what it says. In Shvetashvatara Upanishad, there is a line which is mind blowing. There is a line in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad which is considered an Upanishad on which also Shankaracharya wrote a commentary, though his having written a commentary on Shvetashvatara is a little bit debated. But about the other 10, there is no doubt. He wrote commentaries, Bhashya, on the 10 major Upanishads. In that Shvetashvatara Upanishad, we have a line, Pashyati achakshuhu. This truth sees without eyes. Shranoti akarnaha. This truth hears without ears. Doesn't need ears. You and I are so conditioned to imagine. In order to see colors and shapes and forms, you need these eyes. Ordinarily, it is so, but Brahman is extraordinary. We are so conditioned to imagine that knowledge requires the mind. Knowledge in the mind, in the intellect. It may draw light from pure Brahman, but pure Brahman by itself cannot gain knowledge. That's how we imagine. But study Ramana, study Nisargadatta, study some of those illumined ones. They say there is intelligence beyond thought. What you and I gather in universities, however great that subject may be, is all within the mind and intellect. But there is some knowledge which is beyond the intellect, which may be difficult for many people to swallow. But there is intelligence beyond thought. Even modern mystics like J. Krishnamurti dwelt on it. He would say, you not only see the problem, some problem, rightly, but also dissolve it when thought goes to a side. Don't use thought to solve your problems, he says. A mystical statement. I don't claim to have fully understood it. But at a number of times, J. Krishnamurti says, thought cannot solve psychological problems. Thought can solve mechanical problems, problems. You want to repair some gadget, you want to find out the shortest way to reach some place. There are thousands of problems you and I solve with thought. But to dissolve jealousy, to burn away lust, greed, to completely eliminate this ego, you cannot. I believe Einstein also had said, you cannot solve a problem unless you rise above the problem. So, ego, jealousy, lust, greed, inferiority complex, anxiety, regret, and 100 psychological issues, they are created by thought. You can't solve them by thought. And that is where this chit comes once more to the forefront. Be the chit, be the sakshi. For heaven's sake, let go of your very strong attachment to thinking and feeling, feeling and thinking, thoughts and emotions, heart and head. Ordinarily, yes, lot of life runs on head or heart. We say somebody has a great head, very intelligent. Somebody is full of noble heart, loving sentiments. And a balanced human being is considered very balanced in head and heart. But in the Vedanta, with due respect to that level of problem solving, it is said the most fundamental problem of yours, your ego, goes when you have stationed yourself in the witnessing consciousness. The impossible becomes possible. If Jnana Marga is so hard, take bhakti. Say Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, and let thoughts reduce in quantity. Let impurities go away. In your certain quiet moments, what is operating in that quiet moment? You, the pure consciousness, does wonders. It does wonders. It may look like a statement of faith. Let it be so. Do not undermine faith. Reason is not everything in life. Faith does sometimes what reason cannot imagine at all. Quickly, two more points. What is consciousness? What do you call consciousness? There is this text called Drik-Drishya Viveka. It says, in this matter of seeing, there is something seen and something that sees. The seen is called Drishya. The seer is called Drik. Rupam Drishyam Lochanam Drik. Tadrishyam Driktu Manasam. Drishyadhivrittayah Sakshi Drugeva Natu Drishyate is the first shloka. That's the only shloka I remember because it's decades since I taught Drisya Vivek. You know, scriptural knowledge of people like me is intact if I keep teaching. Anyway, let me not unnecessarily go to something about me, etc. Rupam Drishyam. Names or forms and colors are seen, the eyes are the seer. The eyes themselves are the seen, drishya, mind is the seer. Thoughts themselves are the seen, and sakshi, there is a certain witnessing principle, that is the drik, drishya and drik, the seen and the seer. Now, if sakshi also becomes drishya, what would be the drik? The shloka ends with a punchline, sakshi drik eva. Sakshi is always drik. Sakshi drigeva natu drishyate. It never becomes the seen. So the pure consciousness implied by the word chit is essentially the ultimate seer which never becomes the seen. The pure consciousness on several levels, through the mind, through the intellect, through eyes, through ears, through, and as though that is not enough, you and I in this modern technically advanced age have developed so many instruments. In addition to eyes, we have telescope, microscope, stethoscope, so many scopes. Somewhere I was talking about all the scopes. One student said, please add one more. What? Horoscope. Pandits use horoscope to tell your future. Otherwise, these instruments, right? So, there is a certain truth which may use all this to get specific knowledge, but by itself, it is the supreme basis of all knowledge. I conclude this webinar by saying something about the hard problem of consciousness. Nowadays, many speakers, like the very popular Swamiji Sarvaprayananji, often refers to the hard problem of consciousness. It is simply this. Scientists have proposed many theories how consciousness comes about in living organisms, including human beings. And then they begin with matter, cellular or intracellular, even on the level of neurons and the activities that go on in the brain, and maybe on the level of certain compounds, certain protons, certain other molecules in the human structure. And they give you very impressive, narrative. And then they say, with this A, B, C, D, E, and so on, at a certain point, what was so far only physical becomes conscious. But we say, wait. I don't have any interest in all the sequence of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. When you say at a certain point, it is no more physical, but it is conscious. That leap, that transition, how does it happen? And science has not been able to explain it. How a physical interaction or chemical interaction or any other kind of interaction, A and B come together, X and Y come together, whether it is electrons colliding with each other, cells, meeting each other, some other, anything. A and B come together and consciousness is born. We say, how? How do you explain? So the transition from what is physical and insentient to what is sentient, conscious, is the hard problem of consciousness. Even when an embryo is growing in a mother's womb, someone may propose. Up to a certain point, I don't know whether weeks or months, it is just a matter growing, drawing sustenance from mother's body. And somewhere it becomes an independent conscious entity. Where did that consciousness come from? So there is this issue of hard problem of consciousness. But in a spiritual context, one doesn't have to get lost in neurology, neuroscience, with physics and chemistry and biochemistry and all those. Be the witness. Learn to look at or watch emotions, thoughts, etc. Learn to see the movement of ego with no involvement. There is no interest in changing it in some way. I don't want to change anything. Let me say this and conclude. I have some vulgar thought, let us say. On a lower plane of morality, we try to control that vulgar thought, introduce a noble thought. This is called tinkering. Don't tinker with thoughts. Don't tinker with your emotions. Vulgar or noble, thoughts have risen, emotions have risen. Be aware of them. Be very much aware of them. But we use the word passive here. Be passively aware. Passive should not be taken as a negative word. Passive means don't interfere, don't tinker. If you tinker with it, something will change and you will get lost. Be aware of your ego and all that the ego does without any interference. Then something wonderful happens in you. That is the Sakshi Bhava of Vedanta. Mindfulness, according to those who conduct mindfulness workshops. That is observation, observing without an observer, it is called. That's another complex topic. Observing without there being an observer, meaning without being a sense of, I am observing. You construct a sense of being the observer through thought. And you don't construct, you are observing with no sense of doership. That is observing without the observer. Then some magic happens. That is when all the levels and layers of anatma, if I may use a figurative expression, collapse like a house of cards. That is atmanishta. So right understanding of chit and contemplation on chit can take us on the fast track towards atmanishta or brahmanishta. Om Namah Paramarshibhyo Namah Paramarshibhyah. Let me see if anyone has asked a question in the chat box. Greetings. How can we lift ourselves above thought? Is it by clear understanding? Oh. Yes, Mai Musta asks, clear understanding of our true nature, of the absolute, not the apparent. Yes, clear understanding is so essential in this. But what does that clear understanding do to us? That clear understanding of the Vedanta helps us let go of our interfering habit. Interfering even in the way thought is operating. We want to change it, we want to improve it, we want to suppress it, we want to control it. Or once in a while, for a change, we want to indulge in thought. You think of ice cream and you want to plan where to take ice cream. That's indulging and enlarging. Don't do anything. But the significance and the value of this witnessing consciousness, non interfering consciousness, the significance becomes clear to you by proper study. And once you have greater clarity, you find yourself doing it. Someone has explicitly mentioned J. Krishnamurti. When J.K. says resolve conflicts in mind by seeing that the observer is the observed, here we say the seen never becomes the seer or seer never becomes the seen. Is he trying to make us collect these scattered energies of mind and resolve it into pure chit? Sat is existence, pure observer. Chit is only sat, and that is aham. What does JK mean? Yeah, his language is a little different, but it boils down to that only. So when he says observer is the observed, on a lower plane, it's like observer has certain conditionings, and those conditionings actually influence what you see. A child and an adult go to a mall, and they come back, ask the child, "What did you see?" There was a lot of toys and there was nice ice cream. The child has that conditioning. So child sees as per his programming. The adult says, yeah, certain new things have come. Apple has released a new gadget and I saw it in operation today. See, his conditioning reflects in what he sees. So the world you see, the observed, is actually no different from your conditioning, you, the observer. This as gross examples I gave, but on a subtler level also it is so. The observer himself becomes the observed without realizing what is happening. So Krishnamurti wants us to be aware of that mischief going on. And then when we realize that intricate relationship between the observer and the observed, that awareness itself silences that operation of the ego. That is the meaning. So this language is different, but they boil down. That's how I personally found Krishnaji's teachings have no contradiction with Upanishads. On the contrary, they mutually help. If you have studied Upanishads, it's easier to understand Krishnamurti. If you have studied Krishnamurti, the high plateau statements of Upanishads come out with certain new, clarity. You get more clarity. But everybody doesn't have to study Krishnamurti. You can just study Upanishads with good commentaries, with good teachers. In my life, I had to go. That's all right. So you don't need Krishnamurti is not necessary for you to understand uh, Upanishads. Just as Ramana also is not necessary, but some of us found Ramana Maharshi's teachings extremely helpful to understand Vedanta and so on. So that is all personal stories. Otherwise, stay with one system, stay with one discipline, and there is enough guidance in that context itself. You may go ahead. By passive, you mean detached? Yes, but by passive, yes, detached is all right. But what is meant is um, not interfering, not trying to control, not trying to judge even. Suppose a thought comes to me, you know, about going and having a wonderful masala dosa. Then another part of my mind says, I should not, I'm meditating, and during meditation, why should I think of masala dosa? Not right. So this is judgmental. I dramatized it a little bit, but without dramatizing, even in a subtle form, to label one thought as good thought, to label another thought as bad thought, becomes activity. In passive observation, you do not label, And it's not by deciding not to label, it is just a greater clarity of the matter. You will find that you don't judge as you used to do before. It comes naturally. You don't judge in relationships too. When you and I become more mature people, we don't judge others. Somebody may be shouting, but we don't jump to the conclusion that he's a bad guy. Or someone is smiling, very pleasant face. Nor do we judge this person to be a saint or anything. We never know. Keep it in abeyance, keep it in suspension. Don't judge any person. See, in relationships, when we are non judgmental, a certain quality of, a higher quality of relationships comes about. Maturity. Doesn't mean you forever don't judge. If you are confirmed, you're convinced that somebody is come here with a revolver, and then you got to act on it. But a whole lot of scenarios, yeah, jumping to judgments, jumping to conclusions is a kind of activity. Passive awareness means you don't label your thoughts. And to the extent you don't label your thoughts, the understanding of those thoughts in a greater depth is facilitated. The purpose is to understand deeply. To understand deeply, you have to hold back from jumping to conclusion. You want to understand your daughter's turmoil. You have to listen a lot. Don't, as soon as she comes, Papa, I have this problem. I'm very upset today. Don't begin a long discourse, right? Say a little, but then listen. All right, tell me, dear. What? What? The passive awareness is like that. Listening mode, not the telling mode, instructing mode. We'll take one more question. Yeah, someone says, can you share the shloka Kim jyotir-brāhmana? I'll ask Vibhaji to send it to all of you. Or in Google, you put Eka Shloki, Ekashloki, Eka Shloki of. I wouldn't be surprised if there is audio version on YouTube. It's a very famous, very well-known shloka. Kim Jyotir Bhanumana Hanime, and so on.
Swamiji, I have a question here.
Yes, Ranjan.
Yeah, the Ranjan Desai. Yeah, so we met yesterday, and it was very nice to know that chapter 13, verse number 13. So that's I have a question about that, which is you said Anadimat Param Brahma Sattanna Saduchyate.
Yeah.
So I mean, somebody talked about yesterday that Hindutva means a right-wing organization. BJP it's a terrorist organization also. That's what the meaning of this is. The Hindutva means, but that's actually not the meaning, right? So can you please explain me about that? What Hindutva really means, and then because the heart consciousness and the thing is actually the Nasida Suktam also says that before creation, talks about that, right? So the verse that you talked yesterday was about that. It's in essence the summary of Nasida Suktam. That Brahman was the one who was existing earlier before there was no truth, no untruth, right? No sat, no asat. So
that shloka, Vibhaji has put Eka Shloki on your chat box. And does it reach people on YouTube too? May not, or it can go, I guess. So people can copy it quickly and take it in their device. All right, it has been put. Okay, the shloka in Bhagavad-Geetā has nothing to do with Hindutva. Hindutva, etc., is on a grosser level,
right?
And it's sociology. Hindutva is social dynamics. Bhagavad-Geetā is pure science. Bhagavad-Geetā gives the principles, gives the very basic, truths. Basic truths are mentioned, and then rest of it is up to interpretation. So Hindutva basically is, people ask what's the difference between Hinduism and Hindutva. Hindutva is when anybody singly or collectively takes certain pride in being a Hindu and goes a few steps ahead to stand for Hinduism, to work for Hinduism, to protect Hinduism, etc. Certain activism,
Right.
Hinduism plus some activism, to do something about it, then it becomes Hindutva, which is admired in some circles and criticized in some other circles. So that's more sociology and social dynamics. Bhagavad-Gītā
Thank you.
is not into it.
Yeah, I mean, actually, my question was about the essence of Hinduism is being attacked today, these days, right? I mean, the massacre that happened in Palgaon just recently was that, where they were just,
Oh,
taken.
this is, yeah.
Yeah,
We
in
are
that
all
context was
sad.
asked, actually.
Correct. I fully appreciate that. But yeah, that's a very complicated topic. But we should all look within and act, as per our conscience. We should not be passive. We should not be avoiding issues, nor should we get headlong into it and mess up something.
Right.
So it requires a careful consideration. We should be making a combination of the sattva and rajas in these matters. Sattva, with the backing of some rajas, makes us contributors. Whereas if we are rajasic and there is more tamas in us, instead of contributing, we will spoil things. So, see, Swami Chinmayananji was very sattvic, a great saint, but he used the right quantity of rajas to contribute to cultural revival, religious revival. So he was primarily in sattva. I'll give one example. During his 40 or 50 years of work, we never saw him criticizing some other guru or mahatma or ashram, etc. He just minded his business. At the most, sometimes in a private moment, must have made somebody asked him about Rajneesh. He just, in a casual way, not with much heart into it. About Rajneesh, he said, Vichar acha tha, achar mein fas gaya. He said, Rajneesh got caught in achar behavior. When
Yeah.
Vichar was very great. But that's it. One or two, some passing remarks. Otherwise, in his conduct, there was so much of sattva. Because a sattvic people don't waste time in finding fault with others, criticizing somebody. Sattvic people have their work to do. They will not waste energy. He went around the whole world for 5 decades or 4 decades, okay, 50 to 93, 43 years. Yeah, very sattvic. But he had a little exterior of being Rajasic. Speaking loudly and showing some anger and all that. That is just a veneer, just a facade. Inside, he was very sattvic.
Yeah, I think
Very
I remember
compassionate.
that Hindutva actually means the essence of Hinduism, right? It is in the attack because these days, there are people are
No, we
talking
will
about.
discuss it separately. This doesn't relate to our topic today. Okay, we are here in the same town. Let us meet sometime and
Sure.
talk.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, namaste to everybody. We conclude the webinar at this moment. Om Namah Paramarshibhyo. Namah Paramarshibhya.